Hello, I'm Charlotte Milan, and I'm here today with Kevin Rose, who is from the energy industry, and Kevin is going to help me figure out what my bill tells me about energy usage and think through about what kinds of energy choices we have as consumers. Thanks for being with us today, Kevin.
Happy to be here, Charlotte.
Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the energy industry.
So I used to be a home energy rater. That means I would go into people's houses and try and put a number on how efficient they were. So I used to do that in New York. I currently work for an organization called Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. That's a nonprofit that works in a 12-state area from Maine down to DC on all sorts of energy efficiency initiatives, but I work specifically on building energy efficiency and improving that.
So my first question, Kevin, is does everyone in Arlington get a bill from the same company?
So there are two large utilities that serve Arlington. So the answer is no. Those two utilities are National Grid and Eversource Energy. You might think of, well, where's NSTAR? Well, a couple months ago, NSTAR was rebranded as Eversource. So those are the two. So depending on where you are in Arlington, you're either served by one or the other on the electrical side.
One thing I notice on my bill, first of all, is on the right-hand column it says electric bill summary. That seems to provide a lot of numbers, but most importantly, it gives me an overview of my charges. First, I'm charged for my delivery charges and also charged for generation charges. Can you tell me a little bit about what those delivery charges are?
So delivery is basically how the electricity gets from the power plant to your house. So that's running across wires. There's infrastructure costs to maintaining those, making sure that the wires, if they fall in storms like we've had this winter, those need to be replaced and maintained so that they don't fall in the future. And there's just a general loss of running that electricity. The further you run electricity on a line, the less you get back at the end. It's sort of like blowing down a tube. The farther that wind has to go, the less comes out at the other end. It's a similar principle.
So how does that differ from the generation charges on my bill?
So the generation is at that fossil fuel or otherwise powered factory. Your generation is at that power plant. So there's a cost of taking whatever input energy is being used to make that electricity. Electricity just doesn't happen. It doesn't come from lightning and come to your house. It's usually made by some kind of fuel source. It could be burning a fossil fuel, burning an oil or a coal or natural gas. But no matter how it's made, what basically happens is steam is created in some way, and that travels and turns a bunch of things, and there's magnets involved. But at the end of the day, it creates a current. And that current is what eventually goes to your house. But there's a cost that's involved in creating that steam and heating that fuel. No matter how that steam or otherwise, no matter how that steam is created, it has to be heated to get to that point, and that's where that cost comes from.
And what kinds of energy would be used to generate the electricity that comes to my house?
So depending on the exact source and the exact position of your house, it could be a couple things. There are in the area a couple of oil plants that are still operating. There's an increasing movement to use natural gas instead, since it's a cleaner fuel. There's also been a movement to decommission coal plants, since that's the dirtiest fuel that we have. Essentially, the dirtiest possible way to get energy that we have in a reasonable way is to burn coal. So that's why we've had those plants be shut down recently. More and more in the future, we might be looking at things like renewable technologies. You might have heard of the initiative called Cape Winds, which we hope might someday grow into something a little bigger that would be using wind power to get to that electricity.
So how would I find out who my energy supplier is? So
it's a little complicated. You would think that in this several pages of long energy bill that might be something that's in there. It isn't usually. You might have to sort of do a little bit of digging to find that information. The only folks who are really fully in knowledge of where their energy comes from are typically those who use things like solar energy or other renewable or alternative energies, and they've figured out where the energy is coming from because they've decided it's important to them that that energy is created in a different, greener or less polluting way. So there are things you can do like putting solar panels on the top of your house or buying energy from certain sources where you know where that energy is coming from. Otherwise, you kind of have to do some research as to where those utilities are procuring their energy from, and that could be a host of different places, and it could depend on the time of day as well.
So it sounds like I could be able to find that out. So does that mean that I have choices about where I get my energy, or how I purchase my energy?
The answer is yes and no. Certainly, it's limited as to where you are. Arlington is served by Eversource and National Grid. Those are the two major utilities that serve it. You won't have someone like Wamiko, the Western Massachusetts utility, serving this because it's not in their service territory. They don't have any of their lines or infrastructure that runs out here. So you can't choose to have, you know, if you grew up out in Worcester, you can't have that utility serve you out here and serve you here as well. But you do have some choices if you decide to go in an alternative manner for your electricity. But you may be limited in terms of what choices you do have.
I have heard neighbors of mine talk about companies that offer to sell them energy directly, but it's confusing how that would work if Eversource is my utility. Are there opportunities to purchase power and still get my Eversource bill?
So there are certain agreements that you can come to with third-party organizations, that is, someone who isn't you or a utility. And they serve a role in the market where they can basically help determine where your energy comes from. They're the content experts, so you don't have to do that digging. There's some opportunity for you to do that. You might have heard of those folks coming to door to people in your community. Those options do exist and are part of that limited spectrum of options you do have in terms of exactly where your energy comes from and how much you know about it.
So it sounds like there's a lot for all of us to learn about this still.
It's certainly not the clearest industry there is, and that's, I think, mostly because of how much recent movement there's been. The utilities today were not the utilities last year even. They're renamed, they're rebranded, and those utilities are even different from the utilities 5 years ago. It's a industry that's in flux, and because there's so many pieces, and because these organizations sometimes span different states, span whole regions, there's a lot going on, and so a lot can get lost in the shuffle. So sometimes it's unclear to someone down here at your and I level what's going on up here with these companies.
Getting back to my bill, for example, on the left-hand side there's an electric bill comparison area. And I'm curious, my charges last year at this time, were quite a bit lower than my charges this year for the generation, so for the making of that energy. What explains why that would be?
The cause for the disparity between the cost last year and the cost this year are mostly driven by something called the peak electricity charge. Now, there are two main determinants of how much you're going to pay month to month for electricity that causes it to vary. One is the total amount you use. You know, if you keep your lights on the whole time, you're going to pay more than if you don't. The other thing is called peak, and peak is based on what everybody else is doing, not just you. There are certain times of the day, think the coldest parts of night in the winter when everybody's got their heat on, or the hottest days in summer when everybody's cranking the AC, if they have it. Those are going to cause peaks in the system, and the system is limited as to how much it can produce. You can only squeeze so much toothpaste through a tube if the opening is only this big. Well, the opening for electricity is a little bit bigger than that, but it's limited. And when it's limited, naturally, like in anything, there's a cost to that. So last year, we had some instances where we were limited in how much we could push, and that pushed the price of electricity up. Now that was last year. Now why are we talking about that this year? Well, utilities base their price models, basically what they're going to charge you this winter, they decided that last winter, most large utilities. That's just how their rates are structured. So that's why we were talking about such high rates this winter. That's why everyone was, you might have heard your friends talking about, oh, my rates are so much higher, and you heard National Grid and you heard Eversource, then NSTAR talking about, we're going to raise our rates by 30-odd% because we have to. That's why they had to do that. Now, in terms of generation, those costs were forecasted to be higher because of what we just talked about. But it turns out that we didn't have those really high peaks like we did last year. And you could attribute that to a lot of things. Maybe people were a little bit more knowledgeable. Maybe people on the supply side, that means people who were determining the supply of the fuels we burn to produce the electricity. Maybe they were smarter about where they got their resources and when they got them. Whatever it was, we didn't run into the same peak issues this year, even though we had some large snowfall and other pretty severe weather events. So that was sort of I hate to say an aberration last year, but it drove prices a little higher this year than they needed to be on the rate side, as in how the rate that you used for how much energy you used. What's called a kilowatt hour are the units of electricity you use. If you go to the store, you pay in dollars and cents. When you go to the utility store and you pay them for their electricity, you are paying your dollars and cents for their kilowatt hours. This year they priced their kilowatt hours really high because of the peaks last year. So it turns out that they got that extra money from your kilowatt hours this year, but it didn't cost them any more to generate it, really. So there's a difference between the generation last year and the generation this year. They might have been able to recoup some of that difference upstream.
So it sounds like what you're telling us is that perhaps since there was less peak need this year, our prices won't be threateningly high next year?
Well, that should be the case. So the prices are forecasted by the major utilities like National Grid and like Eversource a year in advance. That's just how their rates are structured. It's sort of just how it's written into their procurement agreements that's what they have to do. As a result of what happens this year with these really high prices, in fear of having these big peaks, but then the peaks not happening, it's opened up the conversation of when should these rates be structured and when should they be determined. And you might see that might change. Like I said, this utility environment that we're in, it's not a static one. There are people moving, companies are changing names and changing regions, and it's a changing industry. So there might be that there's change to be made there to avoid this problem that we had this year with really high rates, sort of without a direct reason behind them.
If I decide that I do want to go with a third-party supplier of energy, what would be some of the advantages or disadvantages that I might want to think about?
The advantages of staying as it is it's a known commodity. You sort of know what you're getting. You're going to get your bill. You might not know exactly what's going on behind it, but you know it's coming, and you know where it's coming from, and you know where you have to pay to. Now, a third party introduces somebody else into the mix. And like I said, this utility world, it's a changing one, and these third parties are changing with them. So there's a risk there that you might have to reintroduce yourself. You might have to stay apprised of all these ebbs and flows of the industry. You know, maybe this third party that you are working with, they combine with someone else. Maybe they spin off. It might not be the same person that you're talking to or the same organization. So there's that risk. But the benefits, at least one benefit is the fact that you might have a little bit more knowledge about where your energy is coming from, and with that a little bit more control. You might be able to sort of vote with your dollar a little bit more than sort of the status quo as just using your utility. You might be able to use your dollars in a meaningful way if you choose to use some kind of alternative or third party to get at a different energy source.
Is there anything that we haven't covered on this bill that you think would be interesting for our viewers to take note of?
Yeah, so there might be one thing under a section called cost of electricity. And you can see it's got these things, distribution, transmission. Those we can kind of put an idea on. That's the cost it takes to transmit the energy across the lines, the cost to create that electricity from whatever fuel source. There's a couple items at the bottom. One says renewable energy, the other says energy conservation. Do you have renewable energy at your house?
Not on my house.
Yeah. So
that I know of.
That you know of. Yeah. So why is there a line item for renewable energy on your bill?
My guess is it might be in the mix of the energy provider.
So in your case, you're paying 22 cents this month to go to renewable energy. And so you're saying maybe that's paying the utility because they're using a certain amount of solar or wind or some kind of renewable energy somewhere to create that energy, and there's a societal benefit for all of us to do that. So you need to be charged, and everyone needs to be charged a certain amount for that. That very well may be the case. It could also be related to the utilities' initiatives to create that kind of infrastructure in the future. This might be some kind of charge that's helping to develop a renewables program. Again, that would be helping everyone, so they're able to sort of defray that cost across all of its ratepayers because everyone's going to reap the benefit. And that's why it's so small compared to everything else. Obviously, if it was just you who was getting that benefit, you'd be paying for all of it. There's also the charge labeled energy conservation. And I don't know, what do you think of when you hear energy conservation?
Well, I have a pretty good guess for this because I have had my Mass Save energy audit a number of times over the years, almost once a year. So I was told that I was maybe helping pay for that with my utility bill. So is that how I'm helping pay for those energy audits?
Yeah, so that's exactly where it's going. So there's energy efficiency initiatives that utilities have in Massachusetts. All the big utilities have them, and it's because they've been directed by the state government to capture all cost-effective energy efficiency. And there's no more cost-effective energy source than the energy you don't use. It turns out that that's even cheaper than the most efficient way you can possibly make it. So the best way for the utilities to make sure that they know how much energy they're going to need to produce in the future is to limit how much is being used by the homes and other buildings that are already on the ground. It's called limiting load growth. So one way that the utilities can limit the load growth of homes that are already in existence is by making them more efficient. So there's a couple ways they can do that. They can look to improve the insulation that's in a home, basically adding insulation where there isn't, or even adding more. They can look at the mechanical equipment or other appliances in your home and making those more efficient, giving higher ratings in newer equipment. There are other things. Along with the insulation, you could look at replacing new windows. You could look at some basic air sealing, basically stopping up holes and air leaks in your house. All of the air that you've paid your utility to heat or cool is leaking out of your house. There's things you can do to stop up those leaks and keep more of that air in your house and all of that money in your pocket.
So please tell us, Kevin, where can residents and viewers go to find out more information about their energy questions and to find out about their energy choices?
Well, the best first place to go is to the utilities themselves. Even though you're paying them your money to use energy, and you might think that they want you to use more of it because then they get more of your money, it's actually in their best interest that they control how much energy gets used. So they've put out a lot of good resources for helping homeowners and people of all sorts to gauge how much energy they use and reduce it. So if you go to your utilities webpage, and typically there's pages for your state or that get closer down to where you live, that helps. So if you're interested in getting more information about your home itself, on what's in there in terms of insulation and equipment and what you can do to make them better, there's actually a really great and free way to do it, and it's through the utilities. There's a program called Mass Save. You might have heard radio commercials about them. So what Mass Save is it's this third party that folks like National Grid and EverSource all pay into, and it's this external body that its only goal is to help you save energy, basically. So what you'll do is, if you go to Mass Save website and you sign up for a home energy audit, you'll have someone come down to your house for a couple hours and take an inventory of what insulation you have, how old is your equipment, how efficient is it, how old are your windows, what opportunities are there for improvements in all of those areas. You'll get a report at the end of that. You'll also have a lighting retrofit done. If you have old incandescent lights, those are the ones, they're 60-watt bulbs, they get really hot. They actually produce more heat than light. So there are much better options out there. It's actually illegal to sell, to create new incandescent bulbs and sell them. The government has decided that they're so inefficient that they want to get rid of them. So there are newer options like compact fluorescent lights, CFLs, or light-emitting diodes, LEDs, which are better. And they'll come to your house, these auditors, these free auditors will come, and if you have old incandescent lights sitting around, they'll put in new, more efficient lights for you on the spot for free, no questions asked. I had it done in my house, and it was great. I had a lot of old lights hanging around, old bulbs that needed to go anyway. They also might be able to give you things like advanced power strips, which you can plug your appliances into, which you can more carefully control how much electricity goes in there. Because sometimes you plug things in, and even though you turn it off, something like an Xbox or a set-top box like a TiVo or a Roku, those things are still on and still drawing power, and it's probably more than you think. But there are these things called advanced power strips, which you can buy and set them up and plug things in the right way that you're able to better control how much energy is going there, and it's not going all the time. So in addition to going to the utilities and looking for one of those free Mass Save audits, there are also all kinds of other resources. My organization, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, has some information online at our website, neep.org. The Federal Department of Energy has resources. There's no shortage of resources. It's just about finding some that you can understand and that are relevant to your needs.
Kevin, what prevents people from taking more of these energy conservation steps at home?
Yeah. So there are two big reasons that I've heard of. One is there's a bit of a false misconception out there about how energy efficient your home is or my home is. It turns out that most people think that their house is more efficient than the average house. It's something like, I forget the statistic offhand, but it's more than 50% think that their home is more efficient than average, and obviously that can't be true. So there's a problem that people think their homes are already efficient, and then what's going to motivate them? There are folks like O-Power, which have done a very good job of being able to compare your performance against your neighbor, and that gets a lot of people very motivated. So that's one, is people who think their home is already efficient. There's a second one, and that's sort of a problem of people not seeing immediately the rewards of their work. So there are some people who do some improvements. Maybe they've put in better windows because they've heard that that's where most of the energy leaves their home. Those are the least efficient parts of the home. maybe they've done some air sealing, maybe they've insulated their pipes. It turns out that sometimes, depending on what kind of weather you have, what happens on the generation side of the bill that you have no control over in your house, you might see a bill that doesn't look any smaller than what you just worked to decrease from your last month or your last year. And that can turn people off from doing more. There's a principle out there that's it's sort of a three-step rule. People will do the first step, and if they don't see anything, well, that was the first one, and they'll try again. Maybe that's the insulating the pipes, and maybe that won't work. If they try something 3 times and they still don't see a change, they're going to give up. It's just sort of human nature.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, do you recommend people give up, or what's your advice to people who feel like they're not seeing enough results yet?
Yep. So my advice would be to keep going, and it's not just because I work in the field of saving energy. It's because there's never been a better time to do it. There's never been more efficient equipment that you can go in and put in a new, better heating or cooling system if yours is getting old, or a new refrigerator or a new clothes dryer. All these Energy Star appliances are better than they've ever been. Insulation is cheaper to install than ever before because of government rebates and all sorts of other pricing structures that allow it to be that way. All sorts of reasons to do so. And we also have the best lighting that we ever had, and that's only getting better and better. So there's never been a better time to increase the quality of your home in terms of energy. Actually, there was one better time. That was yesterday. But today's the next best day.
Great. Well, I think that the audience will have a lot more to look at when they get their next electricity bill. This has been wonderfully informative, and we really appreciate you being here with us today. So thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.
On behalf of Kevin Rose, this is Charlotte Milan with Arlington Public News.